Our next speaker, Dr. Dimitri Michailidis, is amazing. He is the editor-in-chief of several journals, 6 journals, in fact. His current vascular pharmacology, expert opinion on investigational drugs, expert opinion on therapeutic targets, current medical research and opinion, expert opinion on pharmacotherapy, vascular disease prevention, the Open Cardiovascular Medicine, Angiology, the Journal of the American Society of Angiology. Dr. Michailidis then is eminently suited to tell us what happens to a manuscript when it reaches the editor's desk. Accepting the manuscript, who decides? Dr. Michailidis.
Thank you very much for this great honor and to speak with such a distinguished company of other editors, which are much more famous than I am. I don't do all this work on my own, by the way. There are teams of other editors and so on. I'm just more like the orchestra leader, leading an orchestra of a lot of people. So don't think that I read every paper and look at everything. It would be impossible. These are just to show you some of the journals and their impact factors and so on, just in case also people think I'm sort of promotional or whatever. You never know these days. I've been around a lot as a referee, of course, but also as an author, as you can see here. Now, this procedure has been explained to you before, so I won't spend much time on it, but I want to show you where the word editor appears, because that answers your question. Who makes the decision? And you can see editor everywhere, that he or she makes the decision. But you can see also that they can reject without refereeing, and why. I think you've had all the reasons, or most of them anyway, already told to you. Now, refereeing is a big problem, and I think this is, an editor must always keep that in mind. A lot of people said the referee said, oh, the referee is this, oh, the referee. The referee is not necessarily even as experienced as the author. And in fact, there is no more agreement than expected by chance between referees. You've also heard that, but this has been done scientifically in research. So we know that the referees don't agree, and you've heard about that, so it's not just me telling you. Sometimes they're very arrogant referees that think they're little gods that are making deep comments, and they are the only ones who know the truth. Nobody else knows anything, including the editor, of course. And some of them have a personal agenda. These are really terrible things, but unfortunately they do occur, and if anybody wants to know about personal experience, I'm sure we could exchange several examples of that. An editor can ignore referee's comment, and I do that quite often, but an author cannot, unless he's asked or told to ignore point 4 or point 5 if you wish, which is what I usually do. But he cannot decide, well, I'm not going to deal with point 3 and 4, I just don't like it. He can't do that. And bias shouldn't be there with the referee, but unfortunately it is. And to some extent, it's, you've heard this before as well, if you irritate and annoy the editor and annoy the referee, you started off very badly. So pay attention, like Dr. Roberts told you, pay attention, style, discipline. If you can't be disciplined to write a paper, are you disciplined enough to do the research? This is the question that the referee and the editor are asking. Now, the author response must be very clear so that the editor doesn't have to decipher a coded message. It must be absolutely clear. So I respond point, as an author that is, point by point, and often in a different color to make it absolutely clear this is what was asked, this is what I'm saying, this is what was asked, this is what I'm saying. And you can refute a comment. Don't think that because a referee says this or that, then you must do it. It may be totally insane or complete garbage. So you can say that. It's fine. And point to inconsistent referee comments or lack of honesty or something that they say. I mean, I've had referees saying this has been done before and give the reference. And I'm totally perplexed. How did we miss that? So we go and look at the reference, and it's another drug. So carelessness, basically, from the referee. And remember that you've heard that as well. It's not a thesis, but Paper cannot cover everything. So people say, and you should do this and that and that and that. It shows immaturity from a referee. And if you are a referee, do not abuse the privilege, please. Do not think that because you're a referee, you're there to smash and burn and pillage and whatever. That's not how it goes. Keep it simple, improve the paper. So even if it's rejected, it is a positive learning experience for the authors. And this is very difficult now, as you heard also before, and I'm glad the experience is shared by others. Very difficult to get referees. And they are very busy people. It's not the old academic sitting in a room and meditating and thinking. All of us have to serve. We have to do clinics. We have to do surgery. We have to do this. We're all over the place. And we don't have time to read any rubbish. And the editor is aware of that. So he doesn't want to overburden his referees with rubbish. And then next time he asks them, they'll say, oh, God, no, not again. He wants to send them good stuff. So he may reject it just because you've written it badly. And as you said, this is the pitch in the elevator. You may have only a few minutes' attention before you decide to throw it away. And it's not like football, you have a yellow card and then a red card. You may get the red card straight away. And there is these things, these are very unfortunate things, but they are real. Conscious or subconscious, you have to always try as an editor to be very neutral and balanced and just. But it would help if you're coming from a very famous center, if the author is a very famous person, or very well known to you or so on, you rely on him, say, he's a straight guy, whatever he says must be okay. It's not no fraud or anything like that there. And of course, the center reputation, you can look at the ranking of centers today, so people can't just say, you know, my center is the fantastic place and all that. You say, okay, just a second, we go on the thing, we look at the website, it says, no, actually, it's ranked 680th in the world, or whatever. Presentation quality, we've talked about that, so I won't think. Cite your own work was also mentioned. People look at the work and they see your references. Not only is it right, because you declare what you've done before, which may or may not overlap, but you also show the sequence and show you've been around, you've actually done this before. This is not just two people sitting, oh, we've got nothing to do this afternoon, let's write a paper. Now, statistics is often the area where people get into trouble. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but to tell you just pick one example, people have a very big SD, standard deviation, because the data are non-parametric, and what they do is they present you with the SCM, which is SD divided by square root n, as a gimmick to make the scatter smaller. Now, anybody who's a veteran will spot that in 2 seconds and will get very annoyed and very irritated. So try and be sensible about that. Look at other absurd things just very quickly, this man's height or man's weight, and look at that. 0.03 of a centimeter, 0.07 of a kilogram. I mean, these are such small differences that they're completely analytically invalid. But people do that all the time. And look at that, markedly increased in patients, these values markedly increased. And then you look later, but the p-value is not significant. So how can it be markedly increased then? And how does that work? It shows complete dissociation and a lack of insight. And of course, an editor or referee looks at that and then gets very upset and rejects the paper. We've talked about that, so I won't do that. I just want to also show you that don't be overambitious, because if you're dealing with a journal with impact 5, impact 4, you're looking at very high up in the list of journals. So these people are rejecting a huge amount of the submissions. So be careful not only to be absolutely well-disciplined and style, all that, but be careful also, because you'll have to face a very stiff competition. There are ways of looking at authors if they have been in the business kind of thing and if they've been around, because the editor likes to have feedback about lack of quality amongst his referees, any special bias, anything that is not proper. So please do feedback. You can submit your paper in the meantime somewhere else, but that doesn't stop you feeding back to the editor. And some of the editors pass these comments to the referee and say, well, what do you say about that? And then the referee may say, oh, I made a mistake, I'm terribly sorry, and so on. Or he may come up with nothing, never answer. Or he may come up with a complete rubbish answer. And then you know that actually you made a mistake choosing that referee. Blinding the referee to the author's identity has been said to a lot of people, you know, this is what you do to avoid any bias. You just remove the institution and the author's name, and then you ask the referee to do it. And there is a reason why most journals don't do that. I mean, journals are not led by people who are mentally retarded. There must be a reason. And the reason is obvious, and that is that if you read a paper, you often say, we previously described, we previously shown, as we use the method as previously described. You go to the reference number, and you can find who these guys are. So it's very difficult to actually blind. And if you remove the references as well, first it'll take you forever to read the whole text, make sure if they cite themselves and so on. But the other thing, then the referee can't actually work out what's the previous study. Where was it published? What did it say? Because you've taken it away. Of course, if they never cite themselves, sure, it may be more difficult to identify them. But then writing something without ever having any sort of previous experience in that field, well, it's okay, but maybe you should put that in the equation. And what about telling the authors who your referee was, or referees actually were? Again, people say, oh, you should do that. It's honest, it's clear-cut. Yeah, but most journals don't do it. And why is that? And the reason is rather sinister. The referee may be inhibited, and they already reject, don't agree to referee. But when you put that in, you'll have to send 20 invitations to get one referee. But then remember that people get upset when they get rejected, which is not unnatural, and they may retaliate. And then that becomes a very vicious cycle. And the next time the referee can say, these authors I rejected last time were my referees this time, and that's why they rejected me, and so on. And then the editor gets embroiled in the whole thing, and it's just too much hassle. So in conclusion, accepting or rejecting your paper is an imperfect system. Any editor says, I'm always right, I know everything, then this is not true. He or she lacks insight. You can make mistakes. Hopefully you make very few, but you can make mistakes. And as an author, keep that in mind next time you submit something. Whether you're accepted or rejected, know that if you accepted, things went well. If you are not accepted, things didn't go well. And of course, then you can improve your paper. If you're lucky to have referee comments, maybe next time it'll be fine. But whatever you do, get your submission to a high standard. And that was a common theme with every one of the speakers. Get the high standard, because if you don't, then you're already limiting your chances considerably. Thank you very much.